Why?
You do the intro. Come on. You've been spending all week on your stream slagging off my intro and Clayton's intro and all the intros. Come on, James.
Hello,
This
everybody.
is Clash of the
Welcome.
Correspondents, and my
Hold
name's
on.
James.
Hold on. If you're going to let me do it, let me do it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fantasy Premier League. And I, for one, had a great weekend. My name is James.
All right, James. What's going on?
You're not
Yeah,
going to
I was.
introduce yourself?
Nah, I'm Suj. They know who I am. They know who I am.
Yeah,
Come
you're the
on,
head of the
camera.
cartel. Yeah.
Listen, that's alleged. My webcam decided to have a wobbly there. If anyone's watching on YouTube, yes, I am Suj. You are James. Yeah, come on, you're slagging off the intros. I think you should start doing the intros now. Let's see
Well,
what you got. Let's see what you
I've
got.
just done it. Did you like it or not?
I think we need a Twitter poll or a YouTube poll. Let the people decide. Our opinion, James, doesn't matter. What the people say matters.
Okay.
I'm glad. Nice weekend for you. Good. I had a lovely weekend too. I mean, obviously, the football aside, like there's plenty to talk about in terms of that, but cannot complain. Cannot complain. Are we even going to talk about the games, or are we just going to talk about Saka?
Go on then.
I don't think it even needs a discussion. Let's talk about our teams first and get through the points. We'll come back to any nonsense afterwards.
What points?
Well, yeah, as it stands, I think it's interesting. I mean, a few people that stream before us who've already gone above average, family, so on and so on, they sometimes have people posting points and what they've got. There's plenty I've seen in the 40s, 50s, 60s who have done okay. I think overall the average is low, right? 32 points as it stands now. Auto sub still to come in, so it's going to be closer to 40. It is low when we've been used to averages up to 60. And for a lot of engaged managers, it has been in the 20s. But I don't think that's fair to say that that's been the case overall. I'm only on 28 points. The only returns so far, Ollie Watkins and some save points for Mark Flecken. And that's literally it as it stands. Captain Blank in Erling Haaland.
You're not got Rodgers this week?
No, we had this discussion on Friday, James, when you told me that on your benching dilemmas, you had it as Dibbling and then Smith Rowe and then Rodgers and then Rico Lewis. And so I played Dibbling, not because you said that I was going to play Dibbling anyway. I played Dibbling and I made Smith Rowe first sub and I made Rodgers second sub. And so I didn't get Morgan Rodgers for Bukayo Saka. When you make here's the thing, like I made that decision, so I'm fine with it. I think when you make a decision off other people's suggestions and you end up kicking yourself saying, oh, why did I listen to him? Or why did I listen to that content creator? And then you get annoyed. Make your own decisions. Like I'd had that set up from the beginning of the week. Dibbling had a flag or whatever. I always thought if I'm going to own Tyler Dibbling and I'm not going to play him for Leicester at home, then what am I doing with this? When Fulham Villa was going to be a tighter fixture for the two of them. So I think this is it. Yeah, I feel it is what it is, right? At the end of the day,
hashtag play it your way.
Exactly. I'm glad I own Rodgers and he's got me points, right? Do you think you're going to go for an entire season when players on your bench are not going to score points? It's going to happen. You can't then wish that you'd played them all the time. This is not going to work like that. But apart from that, yeah, not good. I've had 2 clean sheets in the past 3 game weeks, and I've got defenders from Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, Spurs in there. One was your clean sheet against Manchester United, and the other was Liverpool keeping a clean sheet the other week. And that's it. I've had no clean sheets for 3 weeks now.
I saw a brilliant clean sheet stat about Tottenham at the weekend. 1 home clean sheet in the last 19
games.
In the Premier League.
Yep. And obviously I've had captaincy blanks now with Erling Haaland not doing the business. So not great at all, but it's fine. If I look at my team set up for next week, like it's not particularly concerning. I've got Ipswich at home for Mbomo and Flecken. Got Southampton at home for Lewis and Haaland. You guys have Crystal Palace away. I don't think that's such a bad fixture. Rodgers and Watkins have Bournemouth at home. It's Trent and Saka that have slightly trickier fixtures, but yeah, I don't think it's too badly set up for next week anyway. And quite often, when you see a low-scoring game week, what happens the week after? You get a rebound. So yeah, fairly okay as it stands, but it has. I'm going to be outside the top 500,000 for the first time, apart from Game Week 1, for the first time this season by the end of today. Because let's not forget, kids, still a game to go.
Yeah, Chris Wood can do a little bit of damage, and there's obviously a number of people still have Eze as well. And there'll be little bits of, I guess, particularly Forest defensively knocking about. So it's not over yet, although he needs, for me, 34 all out with Rodgers off the bench. My returnees basically all came in the space of a 5-minute period over the weekend for me, Suj, which was Ollie Watkins scoring at Fulham, Jamie Vardy scoring at Southampton, and Bukayo Saka getting benched, or not benched, left out completely, obviously, for Arsenal's game at Bournemouth, which meant I knew I was getting Rodgers' goal, therefore off the bench, and that's my week, basically, which included, obviously, I punted Jota as captain. We'll never know. we'll never know. But I have to say, I think I'd read on the game wrong. I felt really early that it wasn't going to be high scoring like I had thought early on. So, I mean, he didn't have any involvement at the top end of the pitch in the half hour or so that he was on. But then he picked up the injury in the 6th minute and tried to carry on. It was interesting as well because, like many people would do, I obviously set up the bus team for Game Week 9 on Saturday and put Jota as first sub. So how much do I need to deal with it? Not sure at this stage.
Price drops and upside on if you were to go to someone else, would they come into your starting team? And is Jota a longer term hold for you? Because if he is,
no,
then...
I can't. I discussed this with Az when I went on Black Box Thursday night. Like I can't view Jota more than like a week at a time. Basically, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? This week, I'm kind of okay because I wasn't intending to start him anyway, and then there's 2 home games and then Southampton away afterwards, but then that linger of rotation concern is there. So I mean I'm up to 3 free transfers now, so there's a number of things potentially in mind of what I do next. I continue to take Haaland on, and from that perspective that went well at the weekend because his underlying at the weekend was almost non-existent by what kind of one fluffed effort in the second half. I know what this Saturday can bring, but I do feel I have a couple of captaincy options to take that on, and I'm going to. Basically, unless Ollie Watkins was to get injured midweek, then that does force a rethink.
I'm depending on what news we get on Saka, if he is not available, then I will almost certainly be finding a path to Cole Palmer.
Yeah. I get that, mate.
I'm just getting it done. The sacrifice, Watkins is one option, or Solanke. I don't like particularly sacrificing either of them, but if I was going to sacrifice one, it'd be Ollie Watkins because after Bournemouth, they go to you and then Liverpool.
Did I
Palace,
just tell
Chelsea.
you that Tottenham have kept 1 clean sheet in their last 19 home games?
I know. And from what I saw at the weekend, like defensively, we in the first half, second half was after you went 3-4 up, it could really petered out. But there were opportunities to get at you, particularly when we were running at you, and they've got runners. They're better attacking as well. So, yeah, no doubt about it. But do I think who scores more points over the next 3 or 4, Watkins or Solanke? Solanke has Ipswich at home 3 games from now, so yeah, it's tricky. But then in between that, you've got Crystal Palace is going to be a tough fixture, I think, and Man City. And yeah, one of those 2 could make me money. Pedro Porro could be a way that I go to make money. I mean, he hasn't really been returning. He had obviously a couple of efforts at the weekend, and he's always in and about it, but frustratingly... He was
more advanced again on Saturday.
Yeah, he didn't. But then again, he's got 1 return in 6, So is that enough? Is that enough to justify holding him with the fixtures that you've got coming up? When I could just go down to Aït-Nouri or Mikalenko and just cheap it out, and then I've got the money to get to Palmer from Saka. So, yeah,
why don't you cut Gabriel? You You sent me your bus team, and you got Gabriel on the bench this week. Why don't you cut
First
him?
bench. Yeah. That bus team, though, was before I'd made any transfers, right? So should I make any transfers, Gabriel may come back into the team.
Yeah, well, you could just transfer out Gabriel. You've obviously got low confidence in Arsenal this week.
It's a 1 week, though, isn't it? It's short term versus long term. Short term versus long term.
I will not be benching Gabriel this week. Mind you, my alternative is Wout Fast, admittedly, but no.
Well, there you go, right? I think, but do you think Liverpool are going to score? They've scored every game this season, haven't they, so far?
Yeah, but they haven't played. They haven't played at the
Forest.
Emirates yet. They haven't had a tough away game yet. I think they will be relieved to
Saliba
get
will
that
be
victory
missing.
yesterday.
Saliba will be missing.
Yeah, I get that. And Gabriel scored at Anfield in December, so he can score against them as well, right? So in a game like this, Arsenal are going to use their set pieces like predominantly a lot to try and get attacking returns. I won't be benching Gabriel. I'd rather bench Trent this week based on what I watched yesterday.
Yeah, who's more likely to get an attacking return?
Well, if Trent plays like he played yesterday, the answer is Gabriel.
Trent can pick up an attacking return at any minute during the game. Gabriel only from set pieces. And
obviously, he's not going to step out like Beckenbauer.
Who has delivered all of the assists for Gabriel's goals so far this season? I'm going to say all of. I mean, 2 goals. Saka from corners. He's not there to deliver the ball.
Hold on, he'll be back.
Nor's Erdegaard. Will he? The first time that Arteta says something positive, he doesn't
I told you
play.
I was suspicious about it.
The first time he says something positive, he doesn't play. So will he? I don't think you can bank on that at all.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me at this moment in time, in any case, is there's obviously European fixtures this week. So I've got a lot of people involved this midweek. So at the moment, yeah, okay, I'm potentially going to lose price on Saka, Jota, maybe. Jota, not such a rush, I think. But yeah, the information is more important for me. Jota's the more likely on the chopping block for me. If Saka's back fit, there's no intention, particularly to move that. There's so many different things I can do from here. So just 1.6 in the bank. Considering the likes of Garnacho, he's on radar. Getting up to Sonny, who we'll talk about in a sec. I wasn't keen on before the weekend, but he was on it on Saturday. And I do look at
second half. He didn't have the most amount of joy in the first half.
Do you know what he is, though? He's for me specifically taking Haaland on. My intention is to captain Solanke in Gameweek 11. And Son just does have that higher ceiling of the whole.
I would... If it was a choice of Solanke or Son, I'd say Son.
Exactly. For captaincy.
Yeah.
Solanke is going to be consistent. He's going to be consistent. I'm certain of this. He's going to be consistent. He's going to do well. I'm not concerned about the last 2 fixtures because I think you could look at the 2 fixtures before that and go, oh my God, his underline was great from the 2 before. So I've got no real concerns about that. But from the captaincy perspective, Son scored 40 points in our 4 home games this season, which includes a blank against Arsenal, right? So it's 38 in the other 3. So the whole potential in a fixture like Ipswich at home is obviously there. So I need to factor that in. If I do that, I'll probably downgrade in Vardy or maybe even Trent. But I don't really want to lose Trent. There's a number of forwards on radar for me. I've spoken about Matthias Cunha a lot recently.
I was going to say, where's Wolves fit into this? Because Strand Larson looked good as well.
Yeah. And Joran Visser, half hour off the bench on Saturday as well, about to walk into an Ipswich side that's depleted defensively. So there's a number of things on mind. I intend to wait out and see what the European fixtures bring, and we'll make a decision on Friday.
Good. Do you want to have a brief discussion on leaks or?
Yeah, of course.
Really?
Of course.
Go on. Where do we start?
Well, I'm not part of any cartel. What about you?
I am.
Yeah, you're the leader, are you?
Yes.
Okay. So why did you keep Saka then? It doesn't make sense, mate.
I think Praz put a tweet out, and his tweet was my thoughts exactly on Saturday. Was that people that think there's a conspiracy around people withholding information sound like flat earthers, and it feels harsh, but I'm afraid it is. Like all the people that create content, right? The people that are out there that have made moves, most of them, I would say, I've met in person, right? Whether it's Gianni's with his photos, which was a bit of fun. Harry on his deadline stream didn't. He actually kept Saka, but was getting bombarded with questions. Andy, so on. I met in person, so I would say not from an online persona or whatever. Not one of them has ever given me the impression that they would want to withhold. Not giving me the impression, they just don't withhold information. People don't withhold information. If you say something that you receive in a leak and it's wrong, what happens, James? You have a deadline stream and you're deadly careful about what you put out there. I think Andy said it yesterday. He said he'd actually had a leaked team that had Saka in it. And what if he'd shared it? He'd be getting pelters the opposite way. They're just, there's nothing to be gained from any of these content creators to mislead people. There's actually everything to be lost.
No, there's more damage to be done.
Something out when you don't, right? And I think that the concept that it's all happening behind closed doors or in secret WhatsApp groups is hilarious because it's so far away from reality, and also the intentions of people are just good. Like I know these people. I'm not like best friends with everybody, but we speak enough that I know there's no intentions like that from people. These are just good people. So if you are like jumping in on it, it's hilarious. It's fun, man. It's a game. Think, come on.
Most people are taking the piss, clearly, but some people do then believe that the piss take that's going on. Basically, let's remember that there's humans here when we're naming names as well, right? Most people will be all right with a banner, but just be a little bit careful, people. I think for my deadline stream, like it was clear that a lot of people were obviously considering moving Saka on and wanted to go Son, Foden. I'd said on my stream that if there was confirmation that he was out, I would move to Johnson. And actually, when you look at the underlying from the weekend, Johnson probably should have outscored Heung-Min Son, quite ironically. That was the move that I'd considered I was going to make. And for me, it would have been, right, I'm leaving the money and then I'm going back to Bukayo Saka in 12 because that's a player I want in the long term. So I can only advise basically based on my own thoughts were he would probably play. But it was quite clear that people were going to wait as late as possible in case there was definitive news either way, because if it had come out at 10:55, he's definitely not playing, I would have sold him. So it's completely understandable that people waited because there was a lot of, these people all made their transfers at 10:57 and 10:58. Well, of course
we always do.
If you haven't made the transfer on the Friday night, I would have been in the same position. If it had come out at 10:55, he's definitively out from a really reliable source, I'd have been selling him as well. I took the decision to say, well, that as far as I'm concerned, normally when his two legs are attached, he normally plays. I'm happy to have this player for the long term. I'm going to wait. That was my decision, and I don't regret it. In fact, it worked out better for me because had I sold him for Johnson, I'd actually be 4 points down at this moment, wouldn't I?
Yep.
And the transfer down. So for me, it's worked out not too badly. Son wasn't under real consideration for me at the weekend. He is now.
Nor me, particularly coming back from injury. He had some time out, international break, all that kind of thing. I think, watching our game, when I say ours, I mean the Planet FPL Derby early, like the second half, particularly when you'd got ahead, petered out so badly from our point of view. I was like, is this a symptom of international break, people coming back and then running out of legs and fatigue? The games subsequently didn't prove that because you've got 3-2 at Southampton, Leicester, and goals in the Fulham Villa game and goals generally across the board. But I was concerned with the coming back from the international break. And Sonny wasn't on radar for me. The big appeal for Son is his price, like 9.8.
Well, for me, like I said, specifically, I'd be looking at captaining him. If I was to get him in, I'd be looking at captaining him in game week 11.
Yeah.
And then moving him straight on, by the way, in game week 12.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about some of these games because as we rattle through the games, some stuff will come out and we'll talk about, and then we can decide and publicly state our transfers earlier in the week so that there's no leaking later in the week. James.
Friday deadline, by the way, Suj.
Is it?
Not a good week for a Friday deadline, may I suggest.
Why?
Well, just all the European fixtures. So I think the sensible option for many people is to wait. I'd say one thing I was thinking, though, the fact that there's a build up to these free transfers now, where you and I have both got free transfers, it does add into the possibility of punting more early on and going, actually, you know what? I am going to just hypothetically, if Jota was going down tonight and the player I wanted was
Just
going
get
up,
it
just
done. Yeah.
doing it, knowing that, okay, if he did get injured, okay, it's a waste of a transfer, but I'm not suddenly taking hits necessarily.
No, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Agree with that.
interesting because if that continues to build, and it's not definitive I'll make any transfer this week, if that continues to build, I've always been of the opinion, oh, second half of the season, always wait. But if you're sitting there with 5 free transfers and you've got an indication of what you want to do later in the season, you would maybe even say there's more of a case for earlier transfers later in the season, maybe even if people have got a build up in the bank as well. I'd never really considered that till this weekend.
No. Cool. Obviously, the Planet FPL Derby. Spurs 4, West Ham 1. Revenger for last season. Yeah. Horrible in so many ways. And yet, I'm going to say, and yet not.
Go on, then.
And yet not. Like, I wore my West Ham shirt for the show, James, people on YouTube, because...
I'm well done.
Because I think it's far too easy. Like, you don't change your team. You still support your team, right? At the end of the day, you have good days and you have bad days, right? When I thought of you at the weekend, enjoying your Saturday, I also acknowledged that you took the trip to Newcastle and had to endure a shit Saturday. And you went to Brighton and had to endure a shit Saturday or Sunday. So why not get to enjoy the Saturday? Like, how can you begrudge you enjoying and having a victory when you put up with all of the shit? The same with my team, right? I'm going to put up with their shit when they play badly, but you can't then just down tools and throw, just look, put it this way, we're not that clickbaity ranting and raving channel. It wasn't a good second half, and more of that probably on Tottenham. But going in half time 1-1, didn't feel like too bad, if I'm honest with you. I thought the first, to get a couple of chances and nick a lead, great. Obviously, you were going to dominate the game at your place. But when we went ahead and we started defending 4-5-1, and then Souček on Maddison and Rodriguez on Kulu, and just don't let them get the ball, or like keep pressing them when they get the ball, it was back to David Moyes. It just literally felt like a Moyes low block style defense, but felt all right. The goals, though, when you turn the ball over and then suddenly where are all the players, those were bad goals to concede. It was that suddenly, why are we not doing what was working all of a sudden? Why is everybody scattered and there's no players anymore? The first goal, obviously, I can't say the first goal wasn't deserved, but I had a bit of fortune about it with the ricochets of the post and whatever else. Could easily have
Johnson
not gone in.
was there to tap it in if it came out.
Yeah, but it could have deflected in any which way, right? I'm not saying it wasn't deserved. I'm just saying there was a bit of fortune, and the own goal was a joke. But then, look, I thought there was a few players that did okay. I thought Wan-Bissaka had a good game. I thought until the own goal, Todibo was doing all right, and then he lost his head after the own goal. I thought Souček played okay as well. Bowen was constantly a threat against Udogie. There were bits and pieces of good sprinkled in with bad. Paqueta, for example, non-existent. Yeah, and I thought even Antonio was doing okay. But there's a big mentality problem at West Ham and the lack of leadership on the pitch. You know the problem. When you go 2-1 down, had the Declan Rice been in the middle of the pitch, you know that there's someone who's going to stand up and sort everybody out. There is no leadership on the pitch and there's no in-game management at the moment. Let me ask you a question. Who is a better football player? Lucas Paqueta or Kulusevski?
Or at this moment, Kulusevski.
No. That wasn't the question. Like, who's a better football player? All talent, skill considered.
You could make a case that Kulusevski's got more variety in what he does in terms of his ability to beat a man. So I don't know. That depends how you define. In terms of actual technique of distribution and stuff, yeah, sure, Paqueta.
Who would you rather have in your team?
Kulusevski, right, because I'll tell you what, he's one person who, when the chips go down, he is still there, running his nuts off for the whole game.
And Paqueta does, like I've always said, it's a good quality of his is his combativeness. Like, you get flair players that shirk a challenge. I was so close to putting £2 on him getting a yellow card and gutted when I didn't because he obviously got a yellow card. But
Two
the
quid,
problem
you
is
know. What would you want?
he
About £1.50.
he he puts a shift in when the chips are down mindlessly. He ends up running around like a headless chicken rather than actually having a bit of game management. And I don't condone violence, but I know most West Ham fans are like, when Kudus kicked off, it was like, well, do you know the overriding feeling was at least someone cares. At least there's a player that's like
I get it.
taking it to heart. I don't want him to be lashing out. So my highlight of the game, James, was literally
Him getting sent off.
Sarr pushing Kudus into Richarlison. And then Richarlison dying.
It was funny.
It was like, yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, not good. But do you know what? It is what it is. It was, if you look at it, I think, James, someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong. At the end of the match, it showed that you'd had no big chances. It's showing now that you had two big chances in the game. I think Son's effort must go down as a big chance. But it was 4 goals from an XG of 1.9.
No, I think the big chance, I think the two big chances
Johnson?
might have both been Johnson's. The one that he had that was saved by Areola in the second half, and Slanky ended up just in front of it, and obviously the header in the first half. I think those were the ones that were deemed as the big chances. I said Johnson's XG was 0.89, according to the FPL website.
And the rest, like there was bits where, and then you just shit the bed sometimes. You're like, okay, we lost it in that 15 minutes in the start of the second half. What I thought would happen afterwards was you'd sit in because you're now defending a lead, and then we would pile on the pressure, and that just never happened. And that was a real disappointment, where it's like, okay, you're 4-1 down, you may as well have a go now, and we offered nothing going forward. Shame. Shame. No one's looking at West Ham from an FPL point of view, particularly with Kudus now 3-game ban. So if he was on radar, he's definitely not. Bowen's still pickable. He's still good, but there's better options out there.
I wouldn't rule Jared Bowen out as someone to look at for the next 3: United at home, Forest away, Everton at home, and then move it on in 12 to someone else. He might be one, if Saka's out, he might be one I consider to go, right, I want to go someone for 3 games here and then go back. I might consider it, but I just think under that circumstance, I'd surely end up going Saka to Son rather than Saka to Bowen. But if Jota was ruled out for a while as well, it's not improbable. I just went, I'm going them 2 for a bit.
Yeah, West Ham will pick up 5 points from the next 3. No, we'll win 1, we'll draw a couple. I've got no problem. 5 or 6 points from the next 3, but it's still going to be a bit meh and shit. The problem is not football ability right now. The problem is lack of leadership, lack of game management, and obviously Lopetegui is under a bit of scrutiny.
Couple of things on West Ham, because I know people want my opinion on Spurs. First thing, he's an absolute dickhead at the end, but Mohamed Kudus was outstanding, Suj. Proper threat. Really
but he
good.
always is.
When I went to your place in April, I came away and my big takeaway was he is a much better footballer than I thought he was. And seeing the game again on Saturday, I was like, yeah, do you know what? He ain't playing for you next year, mate.
Yeah, probably not. We'll get good money for him.
I don't even mean that disrespectfully. I think someone will be coming for him. He's a really, really good footballer. And when he comes back and you've got a good swing of fixtures around about game week 14, he's going to be in no one's teams, because the odd people have taken a punt. Like I know Sam Murray, my Brighton correspondent, had punted on him and made the famous old mistake of tweeting about a player before the game had finished. I'm never going to do that ever again. Is now presumably going to sell him because he's obviously banned for 3 games and then returns just in time for Newcastle away and Arsenal at home. Yeah, I think that definitely falls into sell category, doesn't it? But he's great, Suj. Really, really good player. When I saw the team, I thought, thank you. Because I did a piece for advanced tier patrons last week on Talking Tactics on looking at your narrow 4-3-3 that you deployed at our place last year. And I really thought that was the way to go for you. And when I saw that it was Antonio at the top, I was like, it's never going to look like that. And was pretty happy that your distancing would end up too big to him, which can happen. We've spoken about this. When Antonio's in the team, it's like, I can just play it up to the big lad. Whereas I think like you've got good technicians actually at the top end of the pitch. Don't force it to look for him, and the spacing becomes too big. The goal you scored becomes is because like we can't clear our lines and we just don't defend properly. Jared Bowen a little unlucky not to get the assist for that. Someone else a little bit unlucky to get theirs, Suj, which has also annoyed a lot of people. I have to say, I don't care whether he's given the assist or not, but for the FPO account to delete their tweet explaining why they'd given the assist to Son, hmm. If
It's
you
not.
read, if you read the rules,
Yeah, yeah. It shouldn't have been given.
no. If you read the rules, it's a little bit ambiguous. The rules say if someone takes a shot that leads to an own goal, they will be awarded an assist.
Yeah, but did Ariola made a save? So if Todibo wasn't standing there, there would have been no own goal.
Uh, no,
If Todibo was there would have been no own goal.
no.
So
But
the own goal
if
is
another
because Todibo's standing there.
if another Tottenham player had arrived and scored, we know that would be an assist. I
Then
think.
why is it Ariola's own goal, not Todibo's own goal? Because if the Tottenham player scores, the Tottenham player scored
Yeah,
the goal, not Todibo
yeah,
scoring the own goal.
yeah,
It's stupid.
it's
It doesn't make logical
ambiguous.
sense. Yeah,
It's also I don't own Son, and I also don't really care. But it
yeah.
did add into the cartel went from Saka to Son, and now they've told FPL give me my fucking assist as well, wasn't it? I think just on a serious from the game perspective, if we're looking at Bowen, and maybe it wasn't intended destination to kudos, but if we're looking at Bowen crossing the ball and someone scoring versus Son having a shot that then deflects a couple of times and goes in, which clearly would, it's not like Son's shot deflected straight in. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's just wrong from a gameplay perspective, isn't it? And it's difficult for them to rewrite that. I get it, but he doesn't feel comfortable, I think. I would personally, because I know there's a lot of chat about this, I personally, shots that are rebounded and then someone else scores, I just wouldn't award them as assists. And that would get away from that. Because it's not an assist. The idea of an assist is you set someone else up and they score. Someone who takes a shot and then someone else scores from the rebound is not assisting another player. It's another player's followed up and scored. I would personally have them binned as assists, but I don't really care that he's been awarded it or not. And good luck to those who went on Sunny and have got the returns, eat it up. Although the game week's not finished, so they might change their mind.
Very, very true. Solanke Johnson owner is going to be upset. 4 goals, 0 returns.
Well, more to the point, obviously, before Sonny scored the fourth, you couldn't believe that we'd scored 3. And Son Johnson, well, we thought Son hadn't had an involvement. Son Johnson and Solanke had obviously had no involvement. I think for Johnson, he was due a blank quite clearly, but he probably has had the 2 biggest chances in the game for Spurs. He's getting himself in position. The Kulusevski goal, if it does come off the post, he's going to score, isn't he? He's right there. So he's getting still in the dangerous positions. If people invested there, that's fine. Solanke is causing a little bit of an alarm for people. As I said earlier, yes, if you look at the last 2, you'd be like, okay, he hasn't had a shot in 2 games. That's not great. But then the underlying for the 2 before that against Brentford and Manchester United was fantastic, and he was unlucky not to get more in those 2 games. I'm not selling Dominic Solanke with them next 3 fixtures. If at the end of that, it's like, do you know what? He's not going to be as sustainable as I think, and I still think he will be. Then yeah, we're moving on in game week 12 because there are other players like Nicholas Jackson comes into Leicester away, for example. It won't be a difficult one to sell come game week 12. I'm not selling him in them next 3 fixtures. And as it would still stand, as I said, if I don't buy Son, I'm probably going to put the armband on him in game week 11. So chances will fall to Dom playing in our setup. That's absolutely inevitable. It's just it hasn't over the last couple of games. I felt as well, when I reflect on the last 2 results, that played in a little bit to what we saw actually in hindsight the weekend. And we can't have known that till we'd seen the teams. But yeah, the combination of, I think, you beating Ipswich 4-1 and playing quite well was, I can imagine if Lopetegui had changed the system and it had gone badly, it would have been, oh, why did you change the team? We suddenly had a good result. Like, I can foresee that. So it was a little bit damned if he did and damned if he didn't. But I think the way you set up then played into our hands. Plus, ringing in their ears probably at half time from our lot was obviously the second half at Brighton. And then the two things just combined. And we obviously went on one, which was pretty remarkable. I talked about this more on Tottenham on Wednesday. So the atmosphere in the ground at the start of the second half was so pony that the players lifted that themselves. And that's full credit to them. Sonny, as said, was on it. He really was. What I really liked about him was if you take the goal, how many times you heard me say he don't beat a man anymore? What he did there, right? He went for the lollipops, beat the man on the outside and scored. I liked the fact, and I felt it in the ground when the ball went to him. He's going for goal here, and he was direct about it in his thinking.
I thought he was going to score. When it went to him, I was like, that's the one place you don't want Sonny. He'll go either left or he'll go right. Whichever way he decides, he's going to score here. Yeah, so yes, though I didn't see enough in the first half to make me think that he's back on form. It was literally a little bit of the second half, and he only played till 70 minutes.
And that's the other thing I didn't like, was just going to say, I think he played 65, didn't he? That was the other thing that I really didn't like, was I was like, I know he's coming off early because he's had a hamstring problem. Despite the fact he's the captain, he's not going to play 90 minutes. I think even if it had been 1-1, I think he would have got taken off. I think we probably would have been different. He'd put Richarlison on rather than Werner at that stage. But he wasn't going to play the 90 or so. And also, I looked at the matchup as he's going to play against Wan-Bissaka. And I don't think he'll beat Wan-Bissaka in a take-on. The goal comes because he cheats.
Because Wan-Bissaka's
and by the way, I
think
Tottenham set that as a trap. It felt like Wan-Bissaka had the ball a lot. I've not looked at the numbers from the game, but it felt like he had the ball a lot. And I don't think there was pressure on him in the way Tottenham were putting pressure on others. We're like, yeah, let him come out of position, and we're not fearful about what he's going to do with his distribution and stuff. I think was a little bit of a ploy from Tottenham as well. And credit to Ange for the change, right?
Yep. Because he does get credit for that.
I was really critical of the lack of the change, obviously, after we lost at Brighton. I don't think anybody watching that game had gone, I know the solution here. Let's bring Salah on for Maddison. Maddison, who's created 5 chances in that first half. I don't think he's created more than 6 in a game for Tottenham yet since he joined the club. So he created 5 in the first half, and yet Ange took him off. Maddison wasn't bad in the first half. He just literally told it as it was. He was like, I wanted running power and different legs in the middle of the pitch. And it worked. Sar's assist for Son is beautiful.
Yeah, that's not running power. That's just the great
No. But it's the quickness and the speed of thought. He won. Let's put it a different way. He won the ball in a position that Maddison probably wouldn't have.
Well, this is it. It's that turnover. Both Kula's goal and that goal is where that turnover. Once the turnover happened, we were dead because there was no bodies left in there. And having Alvarez didn't play because he was tired from travel, he would have held his position much more religiously than maybe Rodriguez and Souček. Like he doesn't venture into the opposition half as much, and it is what it is. Like it's frustrating. Pressure's definitely on Lopetegui because the problem is that people don't know what the identity is of this team. We're playing the same formation as we did under Moyes. 4-2-3-1. How are we playing it differently? There's no real clear vision of how we're playing it differently. But we definitely will be able to... I'll rant and you rave with happiness on Tottenham on Wednesday, which is one of our Patreon shows. So if you want to support the show, you can and join in on that, you can. But we will definitely give them... Well, I'll give them a bit more of a kicking, but with soft shoes.
Just to close on Tottenham, from the fantasy perspective, I know some people have gone Maddison. I wouldn't be too concerned about it at this stage. Also, don't be too concerned if he plays on Thursday night. I know that will be a thing, like preempts is, oh my God, he started on Thursday against Alkmaar. I think the fact that he's just played 45 minutes here means that he could start Thursday and then could start Sunday. So don't get in a panic about that if that happens. I would be surprised if James Maddison didn't start at Crystal Palace next Sunday. I imagine it will be a slower tempo game. We know that they'll almost definitely retreat into a back 5 without the ball. So it'd probably be a little bit more suitable for Madders, I should imagine. Decky's on great form. He really, really is on it at the moment. Sonny showed himself well at the weekend. If you want to invest, I think on the short term, it's fine. Solanke, people probably aren't buying at this moment after the last couple, but I definitely wouldn't sell. And similar with Pedro Porro, I'm not selling with those next 3 fixtures. He was much more advanced and threatening at the weekend. And also for people who might be in need of selling someone in the short term, i.e., I think specifically of people who've got Saliba and are thinking, wow, it's suspended and then it's Newcastle away, Chelsea away. I want to jump off for a few games and go back. I totally understand you're going to look at someone like Vardy more likely, but Destiny Doggy at 4.9 wants monitoring now because it's cheap. But having looked at Tottenham's fixture in a bit more detail again last night, I probably want to be coming off what I've got in Gameweek 12, and that may include Porro. So I think if you're investing in new, you're probably looking short term at the moment, and then see how you sit once you get there.
Yeah, I'd say attack first. Like, forget about Doggy. It's just focus on the attack. You'd rather, because you can only have three of them. So yeah, I'd rather focus on the attacking players. Let's talk about Fulham 1, Aston Villa 3. I didn't predict this. I thought Fulham would win at home at the Cottage. They took the lead. Villa came back strong in the end, and people will be happy. The ownership is in Rodgers and Ollie Watkins, right? So they've done well there. Though Luca Dean popping up again. Can I just say, I have had no goalkeeper returns all season.
Was that Leno assist also?
Not a single clean sheet. Nothing from any of my goalkeepers, including Bernd Leno when I owned him. And now he's coming up with assists.
You should have gone Emi Martinez. You could have had a penalty save.
Could have had even more points there. Or Jordan Pickford. No, I'm not jumping goalkeepers anymore.
This isn't the first game we've seen. I mean, obviously, yeah, Villa won. It's a really good victory to win at Fulham. Pereira's missed penalty though. Why is he taking it? Jimenez scored at Forest. It's not like Jimenez, unknown penalty taker. Was Pereira meant to take it, but he didn't feel right because he got fouled in that moment against Forest?
Yeah, that's what Marco Silva said. Yeah, he said Pereira is the penalty taker, but he didn't fancy it, so he gave it.
He shouldn't be on the next one. Yeah, I know Martinez has a great record in terms of saving penalties, but it wasn't a good pen, was it? No. You would want Jimenez, I think, on them going forward. It's interesting for me that he stayed on basically to the end, Jimenez, despite the fact obviously went down to 10 men. And I referenced on my deadline stream some really interesting comments from Marco Silva, which were embargoed quotes that came out Friday night about saying how well Muniz had done in training during the international break while Jimenez had been away, gave a little bit of caution. But I think another goal here, which he's taken really well again. There's no reason for him not to keep playing. But I do think he's a player that you couldn't invest in for the long term. I think you'd be looking, if you invest in him and as you are going, yeah, next 4. And then I'm probably going to move that on to something else in game week 13. That's fine. If that's what people want to do. I probably wouldn't be investing in anything else Fulham know. And I'm not sure I'd want to this week anyway with Joachim Andersen now suspended.
Yep.
For the trip to Everton. He is a player worth monitoring though, because it's gone to 4.3, and the fact now
has he dropped that low now? Has he?
Yeah, with the fact he's now got a suspension, I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here in a couple of weeks and he's gone to 4.2. Keep an eye on that because that's a solid pickup as an enabler. If someone like Anderson gets to that point, it's like 4.2. What are you going to do? You buy Anderson or like Wout Fass, or you're going to go for Anderson, aren't you? So that would be a good little enabler in the long term potentially. For Villa, Rodgers' goal obviously really lucky. And by the way, I think the shot's going wide. I think it should be an own goal.
Okay.
But there's no clear angle that suggests that. That said, a few minutes later, he's missed an absolute sitter that he should have scored as well, which is why his XG number looks really high from the weekend. I'm in an interesting predicament with him where I think you look at some of the next fixtures, like the next 3 away games are Tottenham, Liverpool, Chelsea, and you think, oh, how much do I want to play him in them? And I might not end up playing him in any of them. But I do look at the fixtures for them afterwards and think, yeah, I definitely want Morgan Rodgers hanging around for me for the long term for me. Can't see that moving on for me. I think he's every chance he's just going to stay my 8th attacker unless I deem I go something a bit stronger and give me flexibility between a 4-4-2 and a 3-5-2. If I went for Stewart and then a flexibility week to week, it might be it's him or it's like a Rico Lewis becomes like my choice of who I play on a regular. But yeah, his value is going to keep going up.
At that price, though, the price you picked him up and the price I picked him, I paid 5.1. You paid 5. What are you going to get that's better? Like from the Morgan? It's just whenever you go to look to move him on, and you look in and around that value, there's just not anything else better. So you may as well just keep him. I think for me, I'm in the same boat. He's my seventh attacker because I've got Tyler Dibbling in there. But then I have got Rico Lewis, so I alternate between the two, like you mentioned. I just can't see where I'd go to get better value than Morgan Rogers.
No, it stays on long term for me. So it's going to hit the point soon, though, where people don't look, I think. We looked on COTC during the break when we had Lewis and Lee on together, and we looked at the Fulham attacking midfielders, all had better expected goal involvement so far this season than Rodgers. One thing we didn't mention that's probably really important when you think about it on the long term is Villa are a much better football team than Fulham. And Fulham have done really well. But Villa's capability to go and win a game 3-4-1 is of a higher level than it is, say, for Fulham, right? So that day where he can hit like the goal and assist return always feels more likely than it would do, say, for a Fulham player. That's not to say if you're on a Smith Rowe, you should move to Rodgers. Like, you're probably not doing that with the fixtures, say, that Fulham have got at the moment. But yeah, I guess the majority of people are probably on Rodgers, and those not are going to keep looking at it. But again, Champions League fixture this week. Let's see how we sit afterwards, right?
Indeed.
Watkins, I think I don't want to come off with those away games we mentioned. It's like not great, but like returning any game at any time. It's just absolute consistent, brilliant Ollie Watkins. I feel like there's a number of players who have obviously had big hauls so far this season. Watkins only really had one, but his consistency.
Two double-digit hauls, 11,
he had two, 13. Is he?
Yeah, two double-digit hauls. Everton and Ipswich.
Quite right.
Yeah.
He clearly didn't look fit in the first two games, right? If you look at his returns since then, since sort of the first one in game week 3, like
he's only blanked in one, which was the Man United game, which is up there as one of the worst games of the season. Yeah.
He's on it. He's consistent. That's, I think, going to stay top level forward for me. Like I said, it's him getting injured would be the thing that would make me go crap and Haaland. But the thing is, if Watkins did get injured, do I just look at it and go, yeah, I'm buying John Duran?
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But also, does it then make your pathway to some of the other forwards that you talked about easier, like Cunha? Or would you even then look at Jimenez for a short term?
I just think if that did happen, if Watkins was out for a bit, I think there's every chance I would just go, yeah, Duran, and then I'd go Jota something like that.
Yeah.
And I still have money in the bank.
Let's talk about Manchester United 2, Brentford 1, because there are two forwards there that you could talk about. And you mentioned one, Visser's back in the Brentford team, but Højlund now has started the last two. And we saw it last season where he went on a little bit of a run, didn't he? When he was fit and he was on it, he went on a little run. And I say little, it was like 4 games or 5 games or something. But that's what this game is, catching players when they're on a streak. And from the highlights and from also what people are saying, he had a good game. Højlund seemed on it.
Yeah, I think he comes back in contendership for people looking in that value because United have got good fixtures. But I'll also remind you that Manchester United have now scored one more goal than Brian Bumo this season following that result at the weekend. But it does feel like they'll make that up. Remember, they've been the team that's kind of outperformed XG the most. I don't know if that's still the statistic, but it was a couple of weeks ago. But he's not the player that really caught the eye for me at the weekend, Suj. You can guess already that's Alejandro Garnacho.
You've been on his case for age. Just buy him. Go on, just buy him.
I might. Yeah, I could do. I really, really might. Because you know what he allows for me as well? If I go Jota to Garnacho, I'm obviously sitting there with Vardy, who's clearly someone I want to move on at some point really soon. Rather than going Vardy to Cunha, I could look at it and go, I'm going to head towards Vardy, towards Jackson level or Isak level. And I quite like that. The big change from the weekend is Garnacho going back to the left. That suddenly interests me way more. Now, it might have been something that was specific just for Brentford and it might change back, but it also looked like Marcus Rashford, by all accounts, played quite well in a more creative role, perhaps at the weekend, playing off the right-hand side. Garnacho off the left will be better than off the right. He's XG per 90 so far this season, Sergio Alejandro Garnacho 0.5.
Yeah, I mean,
now
he's had so many bench performances, though, it can skew that. But you say that his price is good. West Ham, Leicester, Ipswich, Everton, Forest as 5 of the next 7. Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, you could bench him at that price of 6.2 as well. Yeah. definitely worth a consideration. Did he start the season 6-5? Yes,
By the way,
he
I mean,
did.
that first one, I've already looked at it. Like when they go to Arsenal in game week 14, Rodgers has Brentford at home.
Yeah, bench him then. You can.
Yeah. Alejandro Garnacho is a really interesting prospect that I've been saying it nearly every week on the pod. He's right on radar for me. That switch back to the left makes me very interested. Checks notes who they're playing this weekend. Oh, yeah, that West Ham. And as you say, it's a decent
Yeah, but
run.
then that's against Wan-Bissaka, who is a
Yeah,
good one-on-one defender. You know,
that went well at the weekend, didn't it? I'm not going to buy Heung-Min Son. Maybe United will kid him out of position in the same way. Although, do I trust them to set up tactically correctly? No. I would say West Ham away and Chelsea at home as the next two actually doesn't appeal massively. But the collection of the fixtures then beyond that as well, and factoring in his value, I think makes him really interesting. And for similar reasons, yeah, I don't mind if people wanted to take Højlund feels a little bit more of a punt to me.
mm.
I think it's one where he'd have a couple of blanks and you get itchy fingers about it. Whereas Garnacho, I'd think if I took the punt on Garnacho now and he didn't have a good couple of weeks, I'd be thinking, yeah, I don't mind. The best is still to come here, actually. He would also, arguably, if I didn't take the Sun route, is it conceivable that I'd land at game week 11 and go, rather than Solanke against Ipswich, I went, oh, do you know what? I'm going to go Garnacho against Leicester.
Højlund is kind of in a bit of a no man's land as well, because you've got your Jimenez or Cunha's or Strand. Well, Cunha's at a similar price, but Strand Larson or what have you that are sub 6. Even Chris Wood is 6.1. Then you've got your Jackson, Solankes are all 7.7, 7.9. He sits at that 6.9 price, which is in between. And quite often, more often than not, people will either go down and get one of the cheaper ones or go up and get one of the more premium ones. But it might be a solution for somebody if they've got an injury or something.
Which category do you bracket him in? Do you bracket him in with the likes of Solanke and Jackson, or do you bracket him in with your Woods and stuff?
Woods and stuff, I think. Woods and
Good
stuff,
fixtures,
I think.
though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the only thing that would sway it. That's the only thing that would sway it.
To be honest, it sounds like they played quite well at the weekend. Sounds like they deserved to win. Thomas Frank, after the game, said Brentford weren't at their best at the weekend. They decided rather than scoring in the first minute of the first half, to score in the last minute of the first half, which happened from a corner at the near post where Matthias de Ligt may well have been. Ethan Pinnock and other Brentford defenders longer term appeal to me more than the fullbacks, as say when Rico Henry is fit, because I know that they'll get goals from set plays. That said, I think they're a really open team at the moment, to the extent I think that when the good sides are playing them, you should consider assets for captaincy against them. Now, that doesn't come back around for a little while, actually. But like, for example, game week 14, I'm not saying this is who I captain, but if you said to me, now you got Captain Watkins at home to Brentford in game week 14, I'm going, yeah, that's fine. They're open. I keep saying this. They're evolving. I think they're giving up a lot of chances. On Flecken, who you've gone with, he palms everything, doesn't he? Whenever he gets, and do you know what that means? There's every chance he make 2 saves. But then there's also the chance that, like, say, against Tottenham, where Solanke's there and scores the rebound, doesn't hold anything. You're not going to move that on because the fixtures are really good. Like, I've got them top of my ticker between now and that fixture at Villa in game week 14. So, yeah, he'd maybe on radar. Sepp van den Berg, he's obviously cheap as and is playing continuously now, but I don't know if I'd ever be comfortable to start him. So, like, Nedeljkovic might lose value, or swap to Van den Berg. Yes, fine. Even with these fixtures coming up, I'm not starting him. I wouldn't fancy them necessarily for a clean sheet against Ipswich at the weekend. Bumo, most people who haven't got are going to be going, oh, hello. Visser back on radar. Absolutely. At the moment, Suj bust with Bumo captain.
Ooh, okay.
Is him versus Palmer for me this week.
I think I'd go Palmer just because of the ceiling. But
yeah, I know. So guess what?
Him.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Bumo.
Do it. Let's go to Ipswich 0, Everton 2 for the sole purpose of confusing James. Because
Did you believe
you did
that?
say to me before we started, go to Ipswich because that's supposed to be before Man United in the alphabetical order of the fixtures. And I didn't, I forgot, but I'm going back there now. So now we're completely out of sync of alphabetical order and time. Sorry,
because
ads.
they delayed the kickoff
Sorry,
by
ads.
15 minutes. Could you? What I can understand is like Az didn't know. For those who don't know,
Yeah.
right? Az didn't know that if games were kicking off at the same time, they were ordered on the FPL website by alphabetical order.
Yeah, and usually on BBC and SofaScore and all these other apps, they're always
Fine.
alphabetical.
He never noticed. I forgive it. But then he puts a poll out and asked people if they knew, and 50% said, "No, I never knew either." What? What's going on?
What order were they the most entertaining first, generally, or goals scored, league position? I'm not sure, but yeah, it's always been alphabetical, which would make Ipswich the second game of the 3 o'clocks. We'll go there now. I thought Everton would do well, but I thought a 1-1 maybe 2-0.
Can I just point out that our Everton patrons were somewhat surprised that you and I on our patron differential show both tipped up Everton to win this. We're like, are they all right? Everton went away from home from 10 months. Yeah.
You have now.
Yeah, Everton are in moment. Yeah, don't be surprised. All those Jordan Pickford sellers, don't be surprised if that's another 1-0 against Fulham at the weekend, by the way. Yeah, they deserved this as well. Ipswich got a real problem at the moment. We've got a problem now with Jacob Greaves. Paul FPL Tractor, our Ipswich correspondent, informed us on Slack on Friday night that there was a big rumour going around that Greaves was injured. And it sounds like he's going to be out till after the international break. Yes.
It's got hammy, right? Hamstring.
Yeah, hello.
It's flagged on FPL website as end of November.
Yeah, so be sort of after the next international break, which is obviously after game week 11. So, yeah, back to Tottenham. They moved Dara O'Shea to right back at the weekend. I think McKenna is obviously clearly not convinced on Ben Johnson, who I guess many of us assumed would now play regularly because poor Axel Twanzebe is going to be out for a couple of months with a thumb injury. We apparently nearly lost his thumb, Suj, in a bit of a freak accident, we think washing up at home.
Wow.
Wolfenden and Burgess at centre back. I don't quite think that's this level. And I'd be concerned
Muric behind
in the colour. Muric is a goalkeeper, it's fine.
He makes saves, but
he makes errors as well.
Yeah, that's it. Calvin Phillips also makes errors in front of them. Yeah,
I know. Leif Davis, and I think the underline wasn't great at the weekend. I don't think, and I know a lot of people played him at the weekend, and I understand that with the fixture at home to Everton. I'm in a position at the moment where I don't ever want to be having a player like him this season. That's great. His underline's great. I'd pay $1 million more for Pedro Porro. Thank you. Rather than get involved in that. It's like Alfie Doughty last year. The underline's great, creates all these chances. Yeah, but actually, was there ever a clean sheet with it? He was almost hoping that he'd get you the 5 pointers because you were going into games thinking, he ain't keeping me a clean sheet. And this might feel a little bit like this in the immediate for Ipswich. I also think, in reference to playing my team in game week 11, I think that midfield will be in a lot of trouble because I don't think its mobility is great with Calvin Phillips there at the moment. He's not the player that played for England. You've seen that again at the weekend where both of them get caught out on the goal, which is brilliant finish by Michael Keane at the end. So just think, teams playing them at the moment should be looked at. Hence, I'm thinking Boomer captain this week. Hence, I'm looking at a Tottenham player potentially captain game week 11.
We've got this situation in the table now. Well, obviously, because Everton beat them, there's a 4-point gap. Ipswich are now just 1 point outside the relegation zone. But there's a 4-point gap up to Everton, who are above them. Ipswich's fixtures are not great. They got the one game against Leicester, but outside of that, Brentford away and you lot and Manchester United. It's a tough run. Actually, and Palace below them.
Just to jump in, I disagree with that. I think other than the game at Tottenham in game week 11, I think their fixtures are good till Christmas, to caveat
Brentford
that.
Away.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. Brentford
it's
are
a winnable
horrible
game
to play against.
It's a winnable game.
I think Nottingham Forest away, defensively, Nottingham Forest have it's definitely, you'd rather play Brentford or Forest, who are bottom half table of the table teams, but Brentford away, you're not going to get a lot of chances. They're horrible to play against. Forest defensively have been so dogged, and then Spurs, Manchester United are difficult. I think in amongst that, I could see them only getting points in the Leicester game. That's the thing. I look at it and I'm like, what's the worst case scenario?
I would not be surprised if they go to Brentford and get, say, like a 2-2 or something at the weekend. But I think
Yeah,
like defensively, they're in trouble. That's my point. If you're sitting there with the lap, oh, they've got them troubles defensively. Yeah, but bear in mind what you said about Brentford. I would, in most scenarios, want to be playing Delap this week. But other than that, I'm not sure about the others.
okay. People are quite frustrated with DCL. Again, no
Again,
returns.
play him this week. I saw General Zod on Twitter, who's an Everton fan. We met at one of our live shows a few years ago. He posted some underlying numbers of Calvert-Lewin throughout his career, and his underperformance of XG is quite mad. It's massive underperformance. This is for his whole Everton career. It's a real underperformance. That said, he's getting in the positions. He looks fitter. The fixtures are good. It's Fulham at home without Anderson this weekend, then Southampton away. Yeah, I'd be holding Calvert-Lewin for at least the next two and then maybe reassess him. And the defensive guys, I guess people will have the likes of Mikalenko this week, and there'll even be a few with Michael Keane, will be tempted to play him this week rather than your Arsenal or your Liverpool players. I would suggest that despite brilliant goal, please do not buy Michael Keane.
No.
He did play really well against Newcastle. He's obviously scored a great goal at the weekend, but Jared Brantwaite was really close. There's every chance Jared Brantwaite will come straight back in the team for him this weekend. So if people are on Keane, fine. I definitely wouldn't be investing in him new. If I was to buy an Everton defensive one at the moment, it's Mikalenko because it's a great enabling price. He got a bonus point at the weekend as well. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Everton win again at the weekend against a Fulham without Joachim Anderson.
Yeah, I was looking before we started recording at just what would happen if you just wanted to absolutely cheap out your defense. You know, Eight Nori, Mikalenko. You could chuck Rico Lewis in because he's sub 5 million. I picked him up 4.7. Ola Aina or Milenkovic from Nottingham Forest, and then chuck in Joachim Anderson or something. You've got 5 defenders sub 4.5. It's not like fucking Gabriel, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Porro, or again, it was Lewis, got me any points anyway. Just cheap all the bastards out.
Yeah, that's
Mikalenko,
now.
4.3.
That's now, but when we start it in game week 12 or so, and then Liverpool's fixtures get better again, and then Arsenal's fixtures get really good, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to go down that route. McNeil is doing really well, by the way. And I think following the Liverpool Chelsea game yesterday, I think his percentage of goal involvement in team goals, I think he's now the highest in the league. I think he's about 69% goal involvement or something. Either he scored or assisted 69% of Everton's goals this season, which is just above now Cole Palmer, I think.
Right.
So obviously
Well,
don't score as many, obviously.
He's got 6 attacking returns, 3 goals, 3 assists.
It's good.
Yeah, it's not too bad for 8 game weeks. You take that. And
he's playing in the 10 position, so he's
still sub 6 million as well, 5.7 million. So
he's
not a bad
going to be in and around involved. If you were buying McNeil or Rodgers new now, who would you buy?
I'd probably buy, if money no difference, because there is a bit of a difference, I'd probably buy McNeil, because their fixtures are good. They've got a good run for the next 5 or 6.
Yeah, certainly up until they go to Manchester United, at least in game week 13. But it's worth saying that there is a period for them that is really rough from game week 15. And if you are investing in Everton, you should bear it in mind. It's Liverpool at home, Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, Manchester City away, game weeks 15 to 18. But again, Newcastle, it's not to say you couldn't bench someone like that, but you put investment in Everton, unless it's an enabler like Mikalenko, you're going to hit that point and probably want to move it on. You would certainly wouldn't keep Calvert-Lewin over that period, I don't think, would you?
No. I think Mikalenko is the only Everton I'm considering at the moment. Newcastle 0, Brighton 1. Great away win for Brighton because they've had some up and down results, but to come off the back of the game against you, to back it up with a win was quite important because they started the season well. They went into a little bit of a meh, but they've only lost 1 game all season now, Brighton, and that was the 4-2 away at Chelsea. Other than that, they've won 4, drawn 3. They're doing okay, but I still feel they're a little bit under the radar.
Yeah, they'll be under the radar for a couple of things like that, how open they were against Chelsea, hangs in mind. There's also things like João Pedro's injury. He's now dropped to 5.4. We think there's potentially a target for him to return after the next international break. He might not play in these next three games. I still see him in so many teams. And I just think there's so many good options. Please move it on. That we discussed this. I've discussed this with Az on Black Box as well. It's like you've got Rutter, Danny Welbeck, who, by the way, we think's fine, might even play this coming week. So if you've got, don't rush into selling him. So obviously he picked up a back injury that looked quite serious, but there's hope that he may even play this week. They left Mitoma out at the weekend. It was on the bench. Minter wasn't even in the squad. So we've got loads of attacking options as well. I get it. They walk into really good fixtures from a roundabouts game week 12. But I'd be moving it on. I really, really would.
Yeah, Liverpool and City as two of the next three doesn't appeal to hold.
João Pedro is not going to play this week. Right? If you've got Mitoma or Minter or Rutter or Welbeck this week and you're looking at Wolves at home, clearly you're going to play it, aren't you? I completely understand that. I think it was interesting that Kadioglu played again at left back because Estupiñán made a real difference when he came on in the game against Tottenham in game week 7. Also, Jan-Paul van Hecke didn't come straight back into the team, despite being past fit, played the final 10 minutes or so. Igor Julio played. They've obviously kept a clean sheet. However, it's worth saying, and despite me saying to Az on Black Box, I really fancy that they might go up there and win. Actually, they were a little bit fortuitous. And they got better the longer the game went on, but Newcastle were a bit unfortunate to find themselves in a position where they ended up behind, actually. There were 8 big chances in this game. Newcastle had 21 shots. That's why Verbruggen has walked away with a 10-pointer. And I've said that I think he'll become an interesting asset option during the course of this season. If I was looking for a goalkeeper move at the moment, I wouldn't be considering him now. Because I'd just be looking at 10 and 11 and going, no, thank you.
Yeah, Liverpool City, don't want that.
I think he's going to be quite popular on wildcard game week 12 for those who are doing that. I think they're much better defensively than they were under De Zerbi. They're stronger.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like that because they obviously conceded 4 against Chelsea, conceded 2 against you in the first half. You're like, okay, that's like 6 goals in a game and a half of football. But yeah.
But also consider that, and I know he's not come straight back into the team. I'm absolutely certain that very soon Jan-Paul van Hecke will come back into that team, which is a good centre back. So that'll make it stronger as well. And have been integrating the likes of Kadioglu, right? I think that might have been his first start away at Chelsea, for example. Brave here. Leaving Mitoma on the bench for Newcastle away. He'd obviously come back not in the best condition from international duty, and that's the reason why. And you might want to factor that in to the thinking in terms of if those are wildcarding in 12, that's the same thing. After an international break and they go to Bournemouth, that's the first fixture. But yeah, if you're wildcarding in 12, you'd have Brighton right on radar, but not at this minute to buy new, I don't think. For Newcastle, I need to be careful over these next couple. Chelsea away, it's probably not expectation that they get anything at the moment. I think most of us were very impressed with Chelsea yesterday. And then Arsenal at home. Forest away feels like a game that could be sticky. There's a little bit of turning where some are quite concerned of where that's going, and it's lingered all season long with them.
It doesn't feel like
right. Yeah,
it feels like the team was as close to first choice as you could be. Like maybe you'd say Botman would get in ahead of Dan Burn. Maybe you'd play Trippier ahead of Livramento, but I don't think that's as clear cut as Trippier's definitely first choice now. Other than that, I mean, they're fairly first choice. Well, what would you do? Say someone else would come in instead of Jacob Murphy, maybe? But apart from that, I think they're fairly first choice. So, yeah. But then also, James, how often are they going to rack up an XG of 2 with 22 shots and not get on the score sheet?
No,
like
but it's worth saying, if you look at it on a graph plot, it fizzled out. So Brighton, the longer the game went on, Brighton became more and more comfortable later and later in the game. Maybe a little bit of influence was Mitoma coming on as well. So it started well. Like I said, they ended up in a position where they were really unlucky to be behind. But then you could say they didn't do enough to then warrant getting more out of it in the second half. Didn't put Brighton under severe pressure at the end of the game is what I'm saying. Brighton controlled it. And there's that. How often would we have said that about a De Zerbi Brighton? You know what I thought about him, but you'd right fancy that, wouldn't you? If you were throwing the kitchen sink at Brighton, you'd fancy yourself to score goals, wouldn't you?
Yep, for
Yeah,
sure.
they're stronger. They are outside of the expected top eight, which is the greedy six plus Newcastle and Villa. They are comfortably, in my opinion, right now the best outside of that, and the only one likely to break through into it this season. They're capable.
Southampton 2, Leicester 3. That Jamie Vardy goal must have tasted good, James, but Southampton. Ooh, ooh,
I mean, look, what did I get for Vardy? 6 points. I think
yeah.
he got a bonus point, didn't he? Yeah, he big. I'm like
No, look,
clearly he's on the chopping block for me, but I wasn't going to not play him against this
nah,
Southampton.
and you've paid nothing for him. £5.5 million worth of striker. Just take those points, mate. But Southampton here, oh, they're going to be kicking themselves because they got themselves in a good position. But once Ryan Fraser managed to get himself sent off, the wheels came off.
Let's talk about Leicester first because Southampton could be an hour and I don't want it to be. Um, Steffi Mavadivi, not Steffi Mavadivi, Abdul Fattah made a big impact when he came on. And I imagine it's such an impact that he'll start against Nottingham Forest at the weekend. If someone wants a real short-term punt for Nottingham Forest at home on a Friday night football and then Ipswich away in game week 10, I don't mind Fattah at 5.4. I'm pretty confident it will come in the team and play. And that, with Mavadivi one side and Fattah the other side, should be quite exciting. We don't know if Cooper's going to be brave enough to start on both start the games. If you're a Mavadivi owner, you might want to keep a close ear on what Cooper says on his presser will certainly be Thursday because the game's on Friday. Keep an eye on that and what Leicester people are saying because he might be a little bit of a concern for this weekend. I'm not fussed whether I keep Vardy and play him this week or sell him. At the moment, like I said, on Saturday, I left him busting the team rather than playing Jota away to Arsenal. But there's also the influence of that, me having double Arsenal defence, right? A Jota
Yep.
return wouldn't actually therefore be good for me. So there's a little influence of that. And obviously, that's an easier decision if Jota's going to be a doubt. He's clearly going to go very, very soon. I'm not sure if I want him to go this week. Defensively, I wouldn't be getting involved in them. It's a great comeback victory. I think that's the first time they've ever come from 2-0 down to win the away Premier League game. Felt
Okay.
like I felt like they'd done that at Southampton in I saw that as a stat, but I feel like they'd done that at Southampton in the year they won the title. But I think that was a draw, actually. I think they came back to 2-2. For Southampton, all people truly want to know is how many is Erling Haaland going to get on Saturday, Suj?
I need him to get about 6 to make up for the last few weeks.
Triple captaincy, yeah?
I wouldn't do it if I had the TC chip. And I'll tell you why. Like,
Have you used it?
yeah, and I got a hat trick out of him.
Oh, shit, you did, didn't you? Well done.
Southampton, this is one of those where it's like, okay, Southampton need, what are they going to do? They're going to know what they're walking into with Man City. It's going to be a low block. I don't know if he can do it, Russell Martin, but if he had any sense, it'd be just like, just dig in. They're fighting for their lives here. And when teams are fighting for their lives, like Wolves were at the weekend, and made it difficult, it can get a bit unpredictable. Now, if City score early, it could be lights out. But I don't know if I would do it just because of how desperate Southampton are going to be to need to get something out of it.
Okay,
Try and get something out of it.
here's where we're at with them at the moment. This is the reality in terms of what's going to happen at the weekend. The reality is that when it goes bad, it does seem to capitulate a little bit for them. We've seen that at Arsenal. Let's remember they went 1-0 up at Arsenal, right? So remember, they outplayed Manchester United for half hour and then missed a penalty and then it went wrong, right? There is something interesting in the last couple of games for them since they were absolutely awful at Bournemouth. I thought they'd have quite a bit of the ball at the Emirates, and they didn't. They only had 31% possession in the first half. Now, to most people, you go, well, I expect Arsenal to have 69% of the ball in the half of football home to Southampton. No, I didn't. I thought it'd be closer to 50. And I definitely thought this weekend that they'd have comfortably more of the ball against Leicester, 45% in the first half. That obviously lowered even
Which
further.
they won 2-0.
Yes, what I'm saying. They were 2-0 up. And that's all 11 versus 11 at that point. Remember,
Yep.
Ryan Fraser, and it's correct, it's a red card, unfortunately. That was at 2-1. So even just looking at the first half, Leicester had 55% of the ball at Southampton. That was one of the most surprising statistics to me from the weekend. So it might be that something here is evolving a little bit for Southampton, which unbelievably, yes, sets them up a little bit better defensively. Just we haven't quite seen it yet because they got blown away in a little period at the Emirates, which can happen to anyone. And ultimately, I think the pressure of this particular game got to them, right? Once Leicester get the first, Fatu comes on and starts hitting long ranges from 40 yards coming off the bar and stuff. You can feel the tension. The fans would have felt the tension in the ground, etc. Been playing Ryan Manning, who really is a fullback slash wingback by trade, as basically a left-sided attacker in the last couple of games ahead of Kyle Walker-Peters. It does mean that without the ball, they are funneling back into a back five. You can spin your narrative either way. If you saw Haaland play against the back five yesterday, you'd go, my concern would be Erling Haaland pulling onto what would become in Southampton's setup here, left-sided centre-back Kyle Walker-Peters, and feel like he's probably going to kill them. Now, presumably, he will move into that sort of zone and target that specifically. It might mean, however, that Southampton don't line up with that player there because Jack Stevens is back from suspension this weekend. And I would expect him to play. And I would expect Southampton to set up in a 5-4-1 and try and make the game quite difficult. Is that going to help them get a result? I can't tell you. But for me, at this moment, I would not be using the triple captaincy this Saturday. And definitively, you need to wait till after Wednesday night anyway, because Haaland's got a Champions League game. In terms of Southampton assets, Archer scored again. You want a third forward? It's 5 million. He's the cheapest playing forward at the moment. Personally, I wouldn't waste the money on it. I'd rather buy Ross Stewart, who's injured. It's probably been my take at the moment. And fixtures for them after City is a couple more good ones. Everton at home, Wolves away, but then it's disastrous. And the biggest problem for Southampton is looking at their home results so far this season because they have had good home fixtures. Manchester United, yeah, whatever. But they've lost at home to Forest. They've lost at home to Leicester. They've drawn at home to Ipswich. Everton at home is their next home game. And if they don't win it, I think they'll be changing manager.
Oof. Russell Martin, first manager to leave.
By the way, I don't think they will because Everton's record against, with respect, the shit and the Sean Dyche is good, as seen again at the weekend. Sean Dyche be prepared for Southampton.
Yep. Bournemouth 2, Arsenal 0. Obviously, let's just touch on the red card straight away first. For you, red and no bias?
No, I tend not to do it. I don't think it's so borderline. I really do.
I think it's a red. I think he was going to get the ball. I think he would have got to the ball and then been 1-on-1, but Saliba could have kept pace with him. I think the cynical nature of it pushes it over. He knew what he was doing there, and he also knew that he was like in line with the last line of defense. If
referee sends him off on the pitch, no question. I think like VAR going, yeah, crack on, get on with it. I think it's a case then when VAR analyzes it, they're taking a lot of things into consideration. Raya and his distance, the distance to goal, the closeness of proximity of other players. And that's why, like, honestly, if anybody is comparing that incident from Saturday with the tossing Adebayo one on Jota yesterday, they're not comparable. Please don't do that. I think it was borderline. I wouldn't have had a problem with it had he not been sent off. But I think ultimately he panicked. And that's surprising because I think we consider him one of the best. So it's surprising that he panicked. It's a little bit, I mean, it was a clearer one, but Radu Dragusin got sent off for us against Karabag in Europa League and he got dispossessed and then panicked. And that was 100% a red card. But in that moment, you're better off letting a man go through 1-on-1, mate.
Yep.
Than that. Because that is ultimately potentially costing Arsenal the game. And we'll never know. I think they hadn't impressed up to that point in any case.
But it was early enough. Like I thought when they went down to 10 that they would still just about find the way to nick a 1-0 because of the quality they have. But it didn't play out like that. Like they weren't good all game.
No, and I'd said to you, like Bournemouth start games really fast. And I think Arsenal were prepared for it because until the red card, there wasn't a lot in terms of goal mouth action before that period in the game. So I think Arsenal would set up to say, right, we'll absorb and we'll trust later in the game that they'll win the game. And that if Martinelli scores, which is a minute before Ryan Christie's goal, maybe you if Martinelli had scored, you'd have fancied them to hold on and win 1-0, wouldn't you? Massively. Who knows? That corner situation which is a brilliant routine, may still have happened. But when I saw the team, there was a couple of things that stood out when I saw both teams. One, I mean, clearly we knew Saka wasn't going to play, but the inclusion of Marino as well made it feel a little bit light offensively. Saka has carried the burden of creativity in Odegaard's absence really, really well. Like, you only have to look at Saka's big chances created, his XA, etc. over these period while Odegaard's been out has been exceptional. And I felt like that was one too many creative player out the team. And I
Was
felt
there two
like,
best players?
yeah, I get that. But I feel like under that circumstance, for me, and I get he probably wants to build Marino into that team. Having the three there, like Partey, Rice, and then Marino ahead, that's fine. But I feel like Arsenal have been working really well recently in what essentially has been a 4-2-4. And I think they should stuck to it. Now, there's a chance Martinelli wasn't fit enough to start. There's also possibly the impact he'd have gone, well, if I change this, I've got to rely on a young boy, Ethan Nwaneri, who's obviously extremely talented, but he might have factored that into his thinking. It's all hindsight stuff. But I think ultimately they've coped without the absence of Odegaard extremely well to then take Saka and Saliba out of it. I mean, listen, you take them three players out of any team and you leave them a man light in the process as well. It's too big. And Arsenal, frankly, on Saturday looked quite ordinary.
Yep. Well described. I was unimpressed, I would say.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean
they lost with 10 men. It happens. Also, I think there's a psychological that they'd obviously been through it a couple of times already. And what worked against City, well, they were phenomenal in terms of the way they defended that situation. Yeah. But you can't, and they didn't, you can't do that against Bournemouth. It's just different. You wouldn't want to be camped in that area in the same way. Plus, Bournemouth are going to be a bit more direct to it. Are you going to sit there? Okay. We're going to throw a few more crosses into the box. The other thing that really struck me with the team lineups, which was the biggest thing of all, was my disdain and pain when I saw that Ryan Christie wasn't in the Bournemouth team. Because I watched the game completely disappear from their grasp when they were at 0-0 against Chelsea a few weeks earlier when he got taken off. I think he's a really important player for them. And I couldn't believe he wasn't in the team. Ultimately, he's come on and basically won the game for them.
Yeah.
He's a really, really good player. They're a better team when he plays. Interestingly, Semenyo went on to played on the left to start the game. I don't know if that's something we might see more of. His problem is, I really like him, and people who own him shouldn't be like panicking or anything like that. You would have known this was a tough set of fixtures. And actually, if you'd have all known the circumstance of what would have happened for those who benched him this week, you'd have played him. He's got no finesse in his shooting, which I'm not quite sure why that's the case, because I think technically he's really sound. I think he's a really good player. But he levers it every single fucking time, doesn't he? You just want a bit of composure sometimes. Maybe take a little extra touch and roll it in, like the chance that comes to him once he'd gone back to the right later in the game. Yeah, that's the only thing. Composure's a little bit of a problem for him. He's almost better striking from 25 yards because of the power he can get in his shooting. He is, however, he's right on radar for me with this swing of fixtures that comes after the next couple, but I wouldn't suddenly be investing in Bournemouth, no. My missus said to me, "Oh, Zabani on my bench, you should have played him." No, you shouldn't, babe.
No.
You did right. This is outcome bias.
No.
It's not a disaster for Arsenal, but if Saka's not back for Sunday, and obviously Saliba's unavailable, assuming, I think kind of best case for Odegaard sounds like he might be a sub in game week 10. I know I won't worry for them. I obviously won't. They might get paid by Liverpool. If they're missing Saka on top of Saliba and Odegaard, might be one too many. I would think that Calafiori or Timber would play centre-back rather than play Kivior again. Liverpool will be hoping it's Kivior again. That is way too big of a drop-off in quality. Way too big.
I think that it's not helped by obviously what happened with Manchester City. We'll move on to Wolves 1, Manchester City 2, because in both, obviously, the game against Arsenal themselves, that 97th minute, whatever it was, equaliser. And then in this game, the 95th minute winner. When you're kicking yourselves, shooting yourselves in the foot, like Declan Rice said, going down to 10 men and making it difficult. And on the other side, Man City are finding a way to grind it out right at the end. It double emphasizes the issues that you have, right? Had City gone away and just drawn yesterday, they'd have feel like they'd have got away with one. And they haven't. And it's the manner of it, the 95th minute, getting across the line when they've needed to. The inevitability of it feels like it's there with Manchester City. The only thing I would say is obviously Liverpool, which we'll get to, are doing really well, 10 wins in 11 on the slot. So, I think for Arsenal, it feels even a bit worse the day after because of what City have gone and done. And in terms of the title race, when you start seeing that little bit of a gap appear, it probably hurts. No sympathy from James, but ouch.
I said this on one of my streams at the weekend. I think City might get beat at Bournemouth in game week 10. I think the sort of team that really give them trouble. I didn't foresee Bournemouth beating Arsenal, admittedly. City are getting by at the moment, I would suggest. And that's all it is.
Yeah, but then they're missing De Bruyne, which is Arsenal's equivalent of missing Odegaard, and they're finding a way, but they've clearly got more depth in their squad than Arsenal have.
But they can't replace Rodri, mate.
No,
and they're not going to.
That's a challenge.
They are vulnerable, and I think there's a bad result coming their way in the near future, and I think it might be that one at Bournemouth in game week 10. Wolves nearly created an XG of 1 from 3 shots on goal. There were 2 big chances in the game. They both fell to Wolves.
Yep.
City's XG is an accumulation of 22 shots. And Jose Sarr made a couple of really good saves in there, particularly in the first half, a couple of low ones down to his right. It stood in for Sam Johnston, we think, had an injury. I know most of the Wolves fans would want Sarr to play again this weekend. Gary O'Neill's comments after the game suggested that probably Johnson will come straight back in next week. Unless he was so impressed with Sarr, he's like, yeah, Sarr's going to play again. But he wasn't giving the game away. I think he's bought Johnson, so he's going to want to play Johnson. Wolves went to a back 5, which worked for them so well when they beat City last year in terms of nullifying the big man up front. And that is a template set. It sounds remarkable, but in terms of over the last 2 seasons, and I know Haaland scored 4 against Wolves at the Etihad, but in a home game against Manchester City, Wolves have set the template of the best way to specifically stop Haaland. They weren't bothered if other people had the chances in and around the box. They were not going to let Erling Haaland have them and didn't. 22 shots. How many were Haaland's? One scuffed effort, I think.
Yep.
He never looked like he was going to score in the game.
No.
That said, the longer the game went, I didn't think City were going to win the game. Didn't think they were going to score.
I try not to analyse Erling Haaland's performance in the game or overthink about it or what have you, because regardless of what happened in that game, Southampton at home next week.
I'm I'm not saying
I know.
It's not even a captaincy debate this week. Like there's no conversation.
But James, I've for a couple of weeks now.
I keep saying that, and it keeps going in my favour. By the way,
how do I want to spread the money? Right? How do I want to spread the money? What would I do if I didn't own Haaland? And he's on radar to sell at some point to spread the money across the rest of my team.
If he blanks this weekend, which I'm fairly certain he won't, by the way, if he does, people are suddenly going to really think.
I really am, but I think the thing is that I can't. You can't make that decision to sell him before Southampton at home. You can't. So whatever he did, there's just no point in overanalyzing, because if you're logical, you're going to keep him and you're going to play him this week. So I'm trying not to look at should I, shouldn't I, because it's not going to help me. I'm still keeping him.
I regularly get on my streams, people say to me, is it mad? And I would say, no, nothing's mad. Play it your way. No, if anyone was thinking of moving that right now, that's mad. You're not going to, are you? The only debate on Haaland this weekend for owners would be, are you captaining him or triple captaining him?
Yeah.
Subject to whatever happens on Wednesday night against Sparta Prague, right? The only way you'd consider moving him is if he was injured. There's no way you would sell before that. That is it's definitively the best fixture. in the league. So no, there's no debate there. There might be this time next week.
Yep.
There's definitely people who are thinking who don't have, say, Palmer, who are thinking, well, I do want to get there towards game week 12, and how am I getting there? And Haaland might be part of the sacrifice. As I've said several times over, one of the reasons I didn't want to go to Haaland and didn't last week was I felt it would be too difficult to sell him come game week 12 for me personally. And I think it still will be for others. It's not like he's not going to have chances against Tottenham. Tottenham won't defend him like Wolves just defended him. You can't look at, Tottenham are a better team than Wolves. It doesn't work like that. And it's not to say anyone who captained Haaland this weekend were wrong, right? Because there was nothing to even definitively say Wolves will play a back five as they'd done when they won that fixture last season. But it worked for them. It's definitely...
Particularly considering Mosquera is out as well, so they're short on centre-backs.
They played the only three centre-backs I've got. So... And they performed all right, Wolves. It will feel like a kick in the teeth what happens at the end with the goal. It's the right decision, unfortunately. Again, any Wolves fans that are using the reference to the disallowed goal against West Ham last year, just look at the images from behind the goals. They are not the same. I would say I'm uncomfortable with it. But by law, the only offside offence is at the moment where John Stones goes to head the ball. And at that point, when John Stones heads the ball, Bernardo Silva is not in line of sight. Whatever's happened before that is irrelevant. I don't necessarily think it should be, but as the law is at the moment, it's a goal. And there's not a debate about that. And it was given as offside on the pitch, despite the fact that wasn't explained on the commentary, which didn't really help people. But you could tell that by the roar in the ground, which was after John Stones was finishing his celebration, told you that they'd come to... I obviously had a conversation and linesman stuck his flag up. So then the review was then to give the goal, which ultimately, by law, was the correct decision. And that's obviously Stones again has popped up as he did against Arsenal. But no Manuel Akanji this weekend, who I think is an important player for them. So if you're suddenly thinking, Johnny Stones, no, them centre-backs are still avoidable. It's Lewis or Vardiol if you want to...
Did Aki get back in the squad? We did hear that he was close, didn't he?
Yeah,
training again.
That's absolutely right. He's a potential little threat for Vardiol, and he is potentially a threat for a fixture like this weekend. He's worth adding. So, no, I'm going to stay away from them for a little bit. De Bruyne might be back this weekend. The biggest headline of all this weekend, though, is there were some members of cartels, Suj, who brought Phil Foden.
Really?
But of course.
Oh, no, they did. And so does that dispel all of your myths? Who knows? Who knows?
I was saying to people that I had concerns about Foden, just thinking ahead. It's all right to look Wolves away, Southampton at home, but then you had the Sparta game. The point I was selling is, how would you feel about Foden if he played 90 at Wolves and then played 90 against Sparta Prague and then KDB's back this coming weekend? Now, what do you do now if you're a Foden owner?
You've got to hold.
Oh, you just play him this weekend and close your eyes, don't you?
Yeah, exactly that. With that
and then
fixture,
assess afterwards.
You've got to. I mean, what are City missing here is the question, right? They played Gundo and Bernardo Silva in the middle, Doku one side, Savinho the other, Haaland up top. What are they missing? Like, De Bruyne gives you that number 10 creativity, going side to side, getting balls in the box, threading passes through. I can get what De Bruyne brings. What are they taking out to put Foden in? Is it Savio on the wing? Is it Doku? Does Foden go out to the left? Where does he come in?
I think City at the moment for me would be best off with Grealish. So would Haaland, by the way, in my opinion. It's just so much more reliable in terms of what he's going to do and deliver. Even if sometimes he comes back and he's just going to play it inside. Haaland knows what Grealish is going to do. He doesn't know what those other two are going to do at the moment, particularly Doku. I say it all the time. I think we should factor this in with Rodri being injured clearly makes City more vulnerable. Mateo Kovacic is a really good footballer who's playing the role at the moment. Johnny Pringle said last week on COTT that his ideal solution in fixtures such as this one, where they're clearly going to dominate, is play Gundogan as the single pivot. But I think at the moment, Pep views Gundogan and his experience as now really, really important. I don't think he's going to play him as a single pivot in too many games personally at the moment. So I think he's using him almost like a hybrid at the moment. And then if he wants to play two wide players, what have you got? Bernardo Silva, KDB, Foden. Right, well, KDB is going to go back in there for the majority of games. They're obviously going to protect him because of his injury issues historically and stuff. We've seen Bernardo Silva play on the right quite a bit lately. Like, I don't think at this moment we can just go, Phil Foden was the best player in the league last year. It's definitive that he's getting back in this team. Because actually, when we're looking at it as well, there's nothing on his form that suggests at the moment that he should necessarily be going back
But
in.
I mean, give him credit, he's not had that many minutes either.
No, and he's had injury issues. I get it, and there's no doubt in his quality, etc., etc. I'm just saying, certainly, let's sell it a different way. Would you buy Foden this week? Now,
No chance.
like you and
No
I both still
chance.
got
I'd find
Saka.
the money for Son
Well, it would be
all
more
day
that,
long.
wouldn't it?
All day long.
Foden owners, here's the important thing with Foden as well, right? Even if he doesn't start this weekend, it's not like he can't come off the bench against the Southampton, who get worse as games go on, it seems like, and return off the bench, etc. So I think this week you just close your eyes and get on with it and reassess next week. But it might be that you've already walked into a problem, possibly. I think if KDB's back, it just makes the situation worse, doesn't it?
Let's talk about Liverpool 2, Chelsea 1. A good game, and Chelsea gave as good as they
I'll
got.
probably just say Cunha Larson, 8 Nori.
Yes,
They're going
but
to
I
be on
think
radar.
if you can wait a week, wait a week.
Yeah, I'm not investing
If you're
in
if you're
this
fixing
week,
the problem, if you're fixing a problem and going early because you know you want to do it anyway, fine, right? It's not the worst thing to want to do. You'd rather fix a problem and go a week early rather than waste a transfer to then jump again. But I'd wait a week if you could.
It was a great assist by Nico's cousin. It was well finished by Strand Larson, who's doing really well at his price.
Solid.
Let's remember that they've had really tough fixtures. That's going to swing, but I think at the moment Brighton away still looks like a tough game this weekend.
Yeah, I'd wait a week if you can.
I felt it was a mistake when they took Cunha off rather than Larson. And I know why they did it for a couple of reasons. One, Larson in terms of defending set plays as well, because he's a unit and they could use him as a target. But I felt they were better off almost going without an actual 9 and just having the running power with Cunha and then Forbes once they'd brought him on as well. I thought it was a mistake to take Cunha off personally. They were a little unlucky. Go on, Liverpool, Chelsea.
Liverpool, Chelsea. I was saying, I mean, Chelsea gave as good as they got. If you take the XG of the penalty out, pretty much evens, just about one each, 3 big chances each. Chelsea actually had more shots in the game, which I'm not saying Liverpool didn't deserve to win, but I think if it was a draw, no one would have been too upset or disappointed. I think Chelsea, both Liverpool and Chelsea actually have had a great start to the season. Liverpool's great start means title contender conversation should be had, and Chelsea should be top 4 conversation has to be had. Like they've definitely cemented themselves ahead of where they would have been, because I didn't see Liverpool in the title race. I saw it as Arsenal against City, but now they're in it. They've done everything they can to be in the conversation, and Chelsea's solid top 4 now.
If Chelsea could do something unexpected over the next 3, I don't know, like 7 points from the 3 games or something, which it's not that improbable, then I wouldn't rule them out.
Of title conversation.
Yeah, just because the fixtures are so good between sort of game week 12 and basically the March international break.
And their European involvement is Mickey Mouse Conference.
Yeah, but you play a reserve team
know.
in that, don't you, man?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Season.
That's what I'm saying. They don't have to have the same pressure that the other clubs do with Champions League, so they can rotate a bit. Cole Palmer's not even in the squad for that. So
no, they will register him in January. That's clear.
Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah. You can change like up to 3 players or something.
Oh, okay,
I think.
Fair play.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they'll register him in January. There's no way they're not going to register him when there's a fair chance they'll go and win that competition. Right? They will want to use him at the end. That's clear, right? And they should. They really should not walk that competition, but yeah, they should go very deep. Let's put it that way at least. The problem for them is there is a vulnerability in the centre back position. Whenever Liverpool went direct, they were in trouble. Colwill, I think Adebayo had a difficult day. Colwill, I think, had a really rash performance for England against Greece. And I think some of that rashness we still saw yesterday. I feel like he needs an experienced head next to him. Ideally, like a Thiago Silva. These players aren't easy to find. Chelsea don't have that player. at the moment, because as much as he and Fofana are both talented, they're both very young. And I think that's a vulnerability that means that at any point Chelsea could have a bad day. But anyone who watched that yesterday must have been extremely impressed with them. The biggest compliment I could pay them is I think every Liverpool fan would be saying today, that was a proper game yesterday, and I'm glad it's over.
And we came out of it with 3 points.
Yeah, and so it's a good result for Liverpool. I thought particularly, but I thought Moises Caicedo was best player on the pitch. I know that Curtis Jones was great and stuff, and so was Mo. Moises Caicedo was absolutely phenomenal. And that now is Chelsea getting a 100 million midfield player, and he's going to be really important for them. Them and Lavia together, if Lavia was going to play more often, it's quite a formidable like double pivot to be taken on. But their structure does work better with Fernandes, where they can move a left back into midfield, which again, let's not forget, not only Fofana, but obviously Cucurella suspended yesterday as well. When they can move Cucurella into midfield alongside Casado and push Fernandes higher to go as a left-sided 10 with Palmer to the 10, that for their structure works much better. Yeah, good side, Chelsea. Yeah, they would they'd be the only one outside the three at the moment that was capable of getting
to break
in
in
this. I don't think they will. But yeah, quite right at the moment, you would make them favourites to finish fourth above, say, my team or Villa at the moment. That would be correct. If I don't captain Bumo this weekend, Suj, it's probably Palmer.
Understand.
Newcastle at home, it's fine. It's reasonable. Jackson is right on radar for me.
7.9.
Timing doesn't feel right, but if I did make that move of, say, Jota to Garnacho as an example, I can then hit that area. And I'm quite interested in doing that and having three up front during the course of the season that would flip between, say, 3 or 5, which would be Jackson, Watkins, Solanke, and adding sort of Havertz and Isak to that. And knowing then at any point, okay, Strand Larson, Cunha looks great, you can drop into it. I'm interested in that idea, but the timing of buying Jackson doesn't feel right. But mainly only really because of the Arsenal game in Gameweek 11. I'm not bothered about Newcastle at home, Man United away. I mean, I
think they'll do all right in those. I think they'll score goals in those, mate.
It's interesting that there was obviously a lot said about him last year, and it feels like there's very little being said about him now. And actually, his consistency isn't just this season, and it is worth saying Chelsea's fixtures have been good, but he ended last season pretty well as well. And he's keeping Nkunku out that team. Can I say, Suj, though, that when Jackson was feeling his knee just before half time, having seen Jota go off like 15 minutes earlier, I'd nearly bought Nkunku within about a minute, I think, Suj. Honestly, if I thought that was the case and he's like going to play at 6 million, because he's 6 million now, Suj.
Yeah, it's a great price.
Yes,
it's
mate.
A great price.
I'd never have that far from my thinking, honestly, if Jackson got injured at any point. But yeah, Jackson's not impossible for me. Defensively, I don't think I'd want to invest because of what I'd said about the problems at centre-back. Sanchez, he's also, I think, is a problem. He's not, I don't foresee him being the top-level number one for Chelsea going forward. And his hesitancy on Jones's winning goal is pretty bad.
Yeah, James, we need to talk about when people come to this podcast, because obviously we're the greatest FPL managers of all time and we give fantastic advice. You're sitting at 11K in the world.
I'm hoping that I'm going to finish tonight, because that doesn't include the Rodgers point. I'm hoping I'm going to be just inside top 10K
top
at the end
10K.
of tonight, I think.
But neither one of us, for a single game week this season, has owned Mo Salah, who is now the top point scorer in the entire game and has had 5 double-digit hauls in 8 weeks. So you have got to top 10K with no Erling Haaland and no Mo Salah all season. You're in the cartel. I've figured it out. You're in the cartel.
Guess
You're
what?
in the cartel.
Finish the sentence, bruv.
Let your way.
No one is ever essential. Ever.
You're right. But it is really impressive to do that, because he's on 75 points. And like I said, 5 double-digit hauls, meaning like when you're looking for your captaincy, if you get a double-digit out of your captaincy, you're super happy, right? Yeah, because of what other people are doing, I think Mo's probably just been another player, but he is bossing the game again. 74 points in 8 weeks.
So, If I go Jota to Garnacho, I suddenly have no Liverpool coverage offensively. Just have Trent, which if he plays like he played yesterday, expected goal involvement of zero, then he ain't going to get me nothing. And he definitely would not be worth the money based on what I'd watched yesterday. But I do view yesterday as a one-off. I think he tactically had the brakes on. I actually think you'll see more advanced, ironically, at the Emirates at the weekend. I could go Saka to Salah. And I'm also conscious of that. That's not to say that I do that this week, right? But if I go Jota to Garnacho and just breathe, the potential for me the following week is to go to Vardy towards Jackson, and you'd say, do that now, James, and I hear you. But if I didn't, it would allow me potentially to go Saka to Salah. And I'm quite interested in that possibility.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think then I'd look at, I mean, Salah then it's 2 home games. They're challenging Brighton Villa, but Salah and home games, and then Southampton in 12.
Yeah. The only way that I would ever be in a situation where I'm getting Mo Salah is if I sell Erling Haaland.
The point that I feel is always important for me with my structure is I've cut myself off of Haaland. He's the only player I cut myself off of. Never cutting myself off of Mo Salah. So he's there within faults at the moment. I don't see me investing this week. But if Arsenal genuinely were without Saka this weekend, I think Liverpool might go there and win, despite I think they struggled in midfield yesterday. And it might be a temptation because if Salah then did do well this weekend, just imagine if Salah did do well this weekend and Haaland blanked. I know, stop laughing at the back. You know what's happening?
Yep.
Straight into Salah Palmer for many. And we'll be there. Like Reece James played yesterday, Suj. We were there. Reece James played. And he did quite well, actually. Just a note on that. Obviously, I think Cucurella will be first choice left back for Chelsea. So James is in competition with Gusto. Maresca said before the weekend, he said, like, James can't play twice a week.
No.
So there's obviously going to be rotation there. Just don't get excited about it, kids. Whoever's going to play right back for Chelsea predominantly won't always be this way, but he's probably going to end up playing like a right-sided centre-back. So I wouldn't get too fussed about that at the moment. Yeah, options open this week, Suj. Don't know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously having 3 frees and the ability to want to take a hit if you want to, it's kind of mini wildcard territory. And many will end up also doing nothing because some of the teams do have good fixtures if you've got City coverage.
I could roll this week.
Yeah, exactly.
At the moment, I'm bust with Jota as first sub. Like, how much do I need to do? Clearly this week, it's another one that's going to look a little bit ugly on paper if you have big coverage of Arsenal and Liverpool players, clearly. Most of it for me is defensive, though. Like if Saka and Jota didn't play, then the 0-0 is perfect, isn't it, from a fantasy perspective? And I don't think that's beyond reason either.
No.
I think Saka's really important to that game on Sunday, and I'm sure he'll probably be fit.
We shall see. Good. One more game to go today, which you will cover off with Clayton on Wednesday on the Clayton and James show.
Yeah, we will cover off.
Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest. We've gone well over our 90 minutes, James. We're into Man City goal-scoring territory time. We've covered off a lot of the questions that we had on Twitter around whether or not you should be TCing this week and that kind of thing as well. So what we got left to look forward to for the rest of the week?
More FPL content for you tomorrow on the People's Poll. That vote is available now up until around about 5:30 p.m. There are 3 options to choose from. What can we learn from individual hauls so far, looking at double-digit returns and what we can learn from them? Comparison of the premium midfielders. So we're looking at, sort of Phil Foden upwards, basically. And also a potential look at what a game week 12 wildcard template might look like. You can pick your favorite from those via at Planet FPL Pod on Twitter. I said Clayton and James show on Wednesday, which we will include coverage of the Monday night football tonight. COTC Thursday is Chelsea versus Newcastle with Gary Mantle and Simon Bibby. Ask James, 9:30 a.m. on Friday when the zombies are hopefully still asleep and my questions aren't too brutal, because I can't be doing an afternoon stream when it's a Friday deadline. So the deadline stream on YouTube will be at 5:30 p.m. UK time. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Podcasts this week include Tottenham on Wednesday, UCL Fantasy tomorrow, Q&A today. Thursday, Barcelona, the levers might be running out, Suj, and we'll
They
have our
might.
Game Week 9 preview podcast on Friday.
Lovely jubbly. That patreon.com/Planet FPL helps us keep the show going. You get the fixture planning spreadsheet. You get access to our Slack community with hundreds of engaged managers. You get some prize leagues, the additional shows that James mentioned, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So why not head over there if you want to support the show. If you don't, then that's perfectly fine as well. Just give it a like, give it a share or a subscribe, and that will help us keep the show going as well.
Audio reviews, please. Thank you.
Yes, whether it's
5
on the Apple
stars.
Podcasts or
Thanks.
Spotify, 5 stars, or
We don't ask for much. It helps. Cheers.
no, anything that's free, just goes a long,
If it's free,
long
yeah.
way.
You can also support us on Patreon as a free member.
That's
you
true.
can get access to the best bits, which will be available again on Friday, which shows you clips from some of our shows during the week. And from basic tier, no ads as well.
Yes.
No ads and early releases.
Good. Listeners, thank you so much for your support. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Please be nice to each other and play it your way. Cue music, please. Man sharp.